constituent. And of course, to all of you, he was a son, a brother, brother-in-law, an uncle, a friend, and a colleague. To encounter Bob was to encounter a whirling dervish. Bob was this ball of energy. And God knoweth, it's true. I mean, he was on the board of the Northern Virginia Technology Council, the board of the International Telework Association. He founded his own company, PatriotNet. He founded the Washington Area Conference in Telework and ran his first conference, more of that later. He was the incoming chairman of the president of Central Fairfax Chamber of Commerce. He founded the first non-geographic specific Rotary in the country so that we could have a special technology Rotary. Bob was a special guy, deeply committed to his family first and deeply committed to this community. He loved it that we were kind of closing in on Silicon Valley. He loved the statistic that half of all the internet traffic in the world comes through Fairfax County. He was a man of action. No halfway measures with Bob. When he threw himself into something, it was going to happen. And by the way, you better put the same amount of energy into it. He did too. He was fiercely devoted to his commitments. And he was always first class in how he did things. For me, Bob sometimes could be a problem because of all those special qualities. I'll start with an easy one. I get a call from Bob. We'd worked together for a couple of years at teleworking. And it's the night before the election in 2000. And he says, I don't know how to vote. I can't make up my mind. I said, the election is tomorrow, Bob. You know, there's been a campaign, there have been debates. What do you mean you haven't made up your mind? I got to come over and talk to you. And I said, well, I can't really have a partisan conversation in my office, my government office. Why don't we go to Artie's and talk it through? 4 hours later, $60 worth of beer and nachos. Bob proved to me he was the original, genuine swing voter. On the one hand, on the other. And after that $60, the most expensive vote I ever got, I think I got his vote. Not so sure. However, a few weeks later, I get a call from Bob DeLorenzi, uncharacteristically sheepish, kind of subdued. You're never going to guess what's happened to me, he said. I said, what? He said, well, the Bush-Cheney transition team has asked me to do all their computer wiring and network for them. What do you think I should do? I said, this time you buy the beer and nachos. And a few hours later, we both agreed it was the right thing to do. And it was certainly a crowning achievement in his career. He took great pride in what he was able to accomplish for the Bush-Cheney transition team. I'm pleased to say, however, a year later, we got Bob back in the fold. He campaigned for Mark Warner and worked in that campaign. I talked about this place and how special it was. In the year 2000, I became the chairman of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and I decided that as my theme that year, we would champion technology, and particularly telework. We wanted to set a goal in the region of 20% of our commuters teleworking by the year 2005. So I set that goal and I got everybody to vote for it, and I announced there'd be a big conference in the fall. Well, it's easy for politicians like me to set goals and announce conferences, but now I had to find someone to run it. Enter Bob DeLorenzi. He threw himself into the task with his characteristic panache and energy. And everything he did with style and innovation. He bumped some heads, but he got it done. We had in this room and in the boardroom 650 people. He raised all the money, $100,000 from corporations. Didn't cost a penny of taxpayer money. One of the biggest telework conferences in the United States, certainly the biggest ever in this region. Got a lot of press, promoted the goal, and Bob, again in characteristic fashion, made sure that every detail of the conference, no detail was too trivial for his attention. As I said, we had some bumps along the way. We had to have the biggest television screen in this form you've ever seen. This was huge. And I know that Bob only has one regret today watching over us. Why is that TV so small? made pillows, cushions for everybody that said WACOP, Washington Area Conference and Telework, on the back of the sponsors. The only problem was we got them about the night before the conference, in big stacked in big boxes. We opened the boxes and the smell of the paint chemical was overpowering. So Bob, undeterred, got every one of us in the planning commission, on the committee that was planning the conference, we all had to take dozens of these pillows home and put them out in our yards to air out for the conference the next day. My final and favorite story, at the end of that conference, WACOP, which was such a success, and Bob took so much pride, and should have, in what he was able to accomplish. And I was the last speaker, and I told my favorite story, which I will now tell to you. In 1996, in the great blizzard of January of 1996, we had the worst blizzard in this area in 50 years. Those of you who live here may recall, everything came to a standstill. And so things were shut down for the better part of a week. And as you know, those of you who live in Virginia, county doesn't own any roads. The Virginia Department of Transportation owns and maintains our roads. Now let's do that together. Who owns and maintains the roads? The Virginia Department of Transportation. However, during that blizzard, if you tried to call the Virginia Department of Transportation, you could get to tell them, I'm snowbound, when are you going to plow my street? So you do the next best thing, you call your supervisor. I was only a year in the job, and I got 900 phone calls in a 3-day period. And people worried, people concerned, people needing to go places, and angry phone calls. The angriest phone calls I got, of course, were from my own neighborhood. What good did it do to have someone from Fairfax County Board if you could get the streets plowed in our neighborhood? And one angry gentleman called me up and said, what are you going to do? The road has been plowed, I expected to do this. And he went on and on and on. When he finally got to catch his breath, I said, well, as you know, the streets are not owned by the county, they're owned, but I'll be glad. Don't give me that, you politicians are all alike, you're looking for excuses. And he went on again. When he finally came up for air the second time, I said, well, look, would it make you feel any better if I told you my street hasn't been plowed? He said, no. Now I know you're ineffective, and hung up. I tell that story 4 years later in the board auditorium, and you know who was sitting over here, jumps up, forget it, who he's talking to, and says, that was me, I made that call. Bob DiLorenzo. Now I knew who the culprit was. In closing my own remarks, I am reminded of the comment Churchill made when Franklin Delano Roosevelt died. They were close companions and collaborators during World War II. Churchill had a great fondness for FDR. And when he was asked, what was it like to meet FDR, he said, meeting FDR for the first time was like uncorking your first bottle of champagne. And so it was with Bob DiLorenzo. Effervescent, irrepressible, bubbling over with energy and enthusiasm. And all of us will remember the pleasure of his company. May God bless Bob DiLorenzo.